Huh?
Yeah, move up.
Good evening. This is Village of Webster Board Workshop, and for October 29th, we're going to change the order, and also that's because there's a great number of people. We have a number of things that are on the agenda for us to deal with here as a board tonight. And in order not to necessarily keep all of you here for any length of time, what we're going to do is we're going to, first of all, we have for item number 3, a retail distribution of cannabis discussion. It was on the docket for the board to discuss this evening. There are a number of people that are here. I believe that it may have gone out, not necessarily by anyone necessarily here on the board, but that there would be this issue brought up for a discussion, and the discussion could include the public. Normally our board meetings that are workshops are not open for discussion. They are simply that, workshops with the board. However, because you are all here, what we've decided is that we will start our program this evening, our meeting, with a discussion of retail distribution of cannabis, and we will allow you to come to the podium. You will have 2 minutes. We will ask that you state your name, your address, and you will have 2 minutes. And clerk will be the timer. At the end of 2 minutes, you've stated what you need to, and if you are here to speak regarding that issue, we'll ask you to sit down. And anyone will continue this until we have gone through anybody who would like to address the board. The issue will be brought up at our board meeting as well with our full board. No decision can or will be made prior to a public hearing. So there will be a lot of further opportunity to present information or present your opinion one way or the other. So that will happen during a formal village board meeting, okay? And most likely that will either occur either on the first or the second meeting of September. But no decision will be made here tonight other than allowing you to speak in that 2-minute period to the board, and we will be taking notes and minutes regarding that, okay? So at this time, I will open the floor. Please be respectful in terms of coming up and state your name, your address, and what you wish to address to the board, and you will have 2 minutes to do that. Thank you. The floor is now open.
Good evening. My name is Lexi Popovich. My address is 42 Girard Street, Rochester, New York. I am the director of the Smoking Health Action Coalition of Livingston and Monroe County, and we work in tobacco control. We helped the village board go tobacco-free and vape-free in their parks and grounds recently this year. And I'm just here to reiterate on behalf of our organization and the community and some of our partners on maybe taking a pause and waiting to address this as more dispensaries in other towns and villages begin to have their license, and there's none in Monroe County at this rate. So I think, once you opt in, you can't opt back out. So I think maybe waiting and being more patient and seeing kind of what goes on around the community and with different towns and villages would be important. We also want to reiterate about the on-site consumption lounges and the importance of safety on the roads and what that means and what that could look like for users who are using these products on those on-site consumption lounges and then getting in a vehicle and driving, and how that will be addressed in the village, most importantly, in terms of safety for everyone on the roadways. So I think that part of it is very important, and I also think that what we do in the community and what we're advocating for health and safety should be addressed also when making these decisions, especially for the youth in the community. And I think that our organization really likes to hone in on the importance of, waiting and seeing what other villages and towns are doing, so you can make a more definitive decision on time, place, and manner, and what that kind of would look like in terms of, the regulations and zoning that will happen here in the village, and how that can be used more public opinion, and what the village and public, the community input would look like as well. So I think it's important to get more input on what the public wants in terms of time, place, and manner as well. So just waiting on that and hopefully seeing what that looks like in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Salvatore D'Amico. I live at 119 East Ave, East Rochester, New York, and I work on 205 North Ave, Webster, right in the village over here. I'm a car dealer and a registered importer, and I'm planning on hopefully persuading the board to opt into having a retail dispensary. And my goal is to offer a safe, reliable source of product to the community, and you have to be an adult, you have to be 21 years or older to buy this product. And it's highly regulated from seed to sale, and I understand the concerns about on-site consumption and lounges, but there's two parts to opting in. There's opting into a retail dispensary and a lounge. And the state does not have any rollout for lounges, and there would be no on-site consumption or lounge at this location. And as far as kids, I'm an advocate of making sure kids don't have access to this. So that's going to be strongly enforced at our location. And I was approved by the state, one of 19 in Finger Lakes, to get this license based on my my past and how I grew up. And I think having a safe, reliable source of cannabis is I think the positives outweigh the negatives. So I just, if you guys have any questions or anything, I'm more than happy to answer directly or indirectly, and I have all my information as well. So I just want to, and I grew up here too. I grew up, my family's on the property in the village of Webster. I grew up on Donovan Street, working there as a young kid, riding bikes around there, hanging around the neighborhood. So this is my home, and I'd like it to be here rather than another town or village. And we have the opportunity to be at the forefront. You guys can all collaborate together to decide what's best and to roll this out, because it's legal. The state legalized it, and whether you guys make a decision now or 2 years from now, it's still going to happen. And delivery service will roll out in these other towns and villages, and they'll deliver to Webster. So that's not going to stop it, even if you opted out. So why not have it by a Rochester native, born and raised in Rochester. So thank you guys for your time.
We'll be done, sure.
Good evening. My name is Katie DeSalvo. My address is 805 Houston Road. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I've worked in the field of addiction for 10 plus years. And I'm the program director of prevention services at Delphi Rise, which is a chemical dependency treatment center in Rochester, New York. I sent the board a report that hopefully you have been able to look through and look at some of this was a national report done by a nonprofit organization to assess the impacts of legalization nationally, and I just wanted to highlight some of those facts below. I will say that my agency, Delphi Rise, contracts with the Webster School District to already address the growing substance use problems that we are seeing amongst adolescents here in this town. So this is a public health issue, and while this is going to happen all around us, we can prevent what happens in our community and do our best to take preventative measures to address that. So a couple things that I wanted to highlight from the report, and I won't be redundant in case you read it. But some of the things that we are concerned about is not necessarily just the sales to young people, which we know happen in legalized states, but the increased illegal sales that come out of a dispensary being in business. We also worry about how young people can get a hold of these products with an older sibling or a parent. And we have seen that, unfortunately, the cannabis calls to the Poison Control Center in other states have grown exponentially. And in Massachusetts, they went up 586%. So even though someone may be obtaining it legally, we know that a lot of products look attractive to young people, and they're more apt to use them not knowing what they are, especially if they're not secured properly. The other thing that I wanted to note is that young people, teenagers who are using, 48.8% of them do not see any risk in driving while under the influence of marijuana, and they report driving while under the influence of marijuana. So that's definitely a concern in our community if we have a low perceived risk and then a higher incidence of use. And we're also worried about the high potency. So unfortunately, we're not talking about the marijuana that was around 30 years ago. Potency levels have rise to a degree that are dangerous, and we're seeing 4 times as many cases of psychosis in young people who are using cannabis recreationally. So these are just a few of the things in the report that I thought were worthy of notating here in this room, but I hope you will take a moment to read through it and see how this is impacting us nationally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Whitlock, 76 Corning Park. My wife and I have been on the street right over here for more than 50 years. And one thought that I had was with a community like Rochester, Monroe County, and the University of Rochester, I gotta believe that there are some people that can share a lot of details about it. You can go online, there's a good report, which I'm going to give the Secretary one copy from the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and apparently marijuana does affect driving abilities. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Tracy Sigafus. I worked in Webster my whole life at Xerox. I live at 15 Brighton Park in Webster. I grew up here, graduated from Schrader. I have 3 kids that all graduated here. And I can tell you from me as a mother, I would much rather, I can't control my kids, whether they do this or not. They're gonna do it with or without my permission. And I can't control what they do. They're over 21, I can't control it. I don't smoke marijuana myself, but kids go away to college, you lose control. It's a legal thing. It's not like what it was when we were young. It's legal in the state. I would much rather my kids go somewhere and not in the city buying it for some drug dealer that's gonna have fentanyl and they're gonna die. I mean, I'd much rather them go somewhere here in Webster, stay in our safe town, do something that's legal, and I know they're gonna come home and be alive. So as a mom, I would much rather them stay here than go into the city and buy something that's not controlled. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'll go. My name is Glenna Colapretti, and I live at 440 Sundance Trail. My family's been in Webster since I can remember. The Brushes settled here in farms and stores. And if my 103-year-old grandmother could use CBD and ask if that was cannabis and how it helped her arthritis, then she got past the stigma as far as what it is and what it really means. I understand everything that everyone's saying. I personally do not imbibe, but I support that people should be able to, just like whether they want a shot of whiskey or a glass of wine, but they need to buy it from an established environment that has a license, that's clean, that's tested, that revenue, and it's traced and tracked, and kids are not walking into a liquor store purchasing products that I've seen around Webster. There's much more impact as far as opioids to devastation for kids. There are facts as far as the state and across the nation that opioid reduction goes down where cannabis is legalized, that property values increase by 7% within a half a mile of dispensary, and they're not using it at the dispensary. They're buying it in a package that is child resistant. They take it home and they imbibe in their own space in a child resistant package to mitigate the opportunity for children to have access to it. The state has rolled out significant programs to diminish, sorry about that, the attractiveness of the package. There's no cartoons, there's no neon signs, neon colors. They're trying to mitigate the attractiveness of that package, just like they do with liquor. I am a patented engineer. I worked for Verizon headquarters for 20 years. I developed significant nerve damage, and that's how I grew Glenna's CBD to help my own pain. I then received a license from the state to grow cannabis, so I am currently a licensed grower and cultivator. I'm also a licensed processor, and I invite any of you to come to my farm and tour and see how stringent the seed-to-sale tracking is. Last point I'll make is that I understand the potency, I understand that conversation, but a lot of the money realized from the sale of cannabis is going to come back to the village, a significant amount of taxes, and money is assigned directly to drug rehabilitation programs, community programs, daycares, a significant element to really help the community heal from the war on drugs. I also, last point, you're right, it's legal. People can buy it, they can deliver it. They're delivering it right now to Webster. In 2 weeks, a dispensary is opening on East Ave. You may miss out on the opportunities to get the limited licenses that were rolled out in the Finger Lakes. So any questions, please reach out to me. I'm also a professor at Finger Lakes Community College. I teach regulations of cannabis cultivation. I can assure you, we're a very regulated business. So thank you for your time.
I'm Kathy Whitlock, the other half of Dave. I too live at 76 Corning Park in the village of Webster. I realize that marijuana is legal, but making it legal does not make it safe for everyone. My concern, even though I know you have to be 21 to buy it legally, my concern is that it is within walking distance of a middle school, of Spry. Living on Corning Park, we often see kids walking down to the village. I just feel that as a village, as a community, taking care of our young people in a safe way, and not subjecting them to some of these things, if we have the opportunity not to suggest them, submit them to it, is something that we as a community really, really need to do. So I urge you to think beyond the money that you might get from the taxes, and think about what it is we want for our young people. Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Wendy McVeigh. I live at 333 Hartsville Lane, Webster. I work for the Webster Methodist Church as the Director of Family Ministries. But I'm speaking to you tonight as a mother. Sorry about that. And as somebody that works with teenagers. Even if the cannabis that's sold here in the village is legal and safe and only sold to adults, the perception that young people have is that any marijuana product they get their hands on is safe. And oftentimes it's not. I have witnessed teenagers have overdoses after taking a cannabis product that they thought was legal and safe. And as a mother, I am asking you to please look at the research and the statistics involving young people. And I am asking that you would help me not witness another overdose in our town. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Janine Sanger. I live at 822 Tinker Tavern Road in Webster. I'm the Executive Director of the Webster Health and Education Network, and we are a community coalition comprised of about 70 members representing all sectors of our community. Our goal as a community coalition is to stave off first use of drugs and alcohol by young people as long as possible. By doing that, we hope to them avoid addiction later in life. So I think about the complexion of our town. I think about the optics of having a dispensary in our village and what that looks like to kids. And I'm, going to repeat some of the things you've already heard. We talk about risk and protective factors, and as a coalition, as a community, as a school district, our goal is to increase protective factors, decrease risk factors because the more protective factors one has, the less likely it is they'll engage in risky behaviors, plain and simple. Environmental factors that are risk factors includes easy access to nicotine, alcohol, or drugs, more frequent exposure to popular culture and advertising that encourage substance use. They all contribute to risk factors and what our kids' perceptions are about use. So by having a dispensary, by allowing a dispensary to open in our village, we are increasing those risk factors for our children and our citizens. I appreciate that the packaging is being changed so that it is not as desirable to a child. I don't know how accurate that is at present time. I'm hoping that that comes to fruition because from what I can see, those products are very enticing to children and they're dangerous. I'm probably certain that you won't be only offering smokable products, that you'll be offering edibles and gummies and things of that nature. Those are very concerning to me. As the last speaker said, kids are attracted to that. They take one, it doesn't work for a while. They take another because they're not feeling anything. Then they take another and they overdose. And that is very, very frightening, obviously. So I'm asking you to take your time, consider this very thoughtfully, really weigh the amount of revenue that you will realize as a village, and will that revenue offset the cost that our young people and our families will experience. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Tom McEwen. I live at 1217 Wildflower Drive right over here off of 250. I love Webster. I have lived here my whole life. My wife and I recently moved back here. It's a great place to be. I have some incredible memories with friends and family all over the place around here. And what I want to bring up that I've heard a lot today is the word safe. I went to Willink, I went to Thomas. There's a long list of peers and individuals that I have witnessed go into downtown Rochester to purchase marijuana. There are some very sketchy and scary encounters and stories that I have heard about these individuals trying to obtain marijuana. I personally do not use marijuana. I know a lot of friends that do, and at the end of the day, if someone really wants to get a hold on marijuana, they are going to get a hold on it. So why would we not want a safe place for it right here in the village of Webster where the chances of encountering and having a violent interaction are so much less and it's so much more slim. So I would just like to say to the board, having it here, it's a good source of revenue and it offers a safer outlet for someone to acquire marijuana. And my final point, speaking of edibles and different things like that, and Jello shots and different things like that, again, I have been at parties and at events where those things are being made, and they're being made by the homeowner. They're being made by the person hosting the party. They're not consistent. Sometimes there's nothing in it, sometimes they're extremely strong. They're not regulated. When something is regulated, when it comes in a certain amount at a certain dosage, you know, you learn how much is in that. There's too much unknown, there's too much variability when you're relying on someone outside of a regulation deploying and distributing that product. Thank you.
My name is Rick Ledoux, and I live at 1305 Cardinal Lane in Webster, and I'm the pastor of the Webster Methodist Church, but I'm not here speaking on behalf of the church, although I think most of the folks in our church would be concerned about the opening of a business selling cannabis. The spiritual concern is that, you know, we're providing another opportunity for people to escape from God's best for their lives, and so we would discourage that in our community. But at the very least, I would hope the board would, at the very least, wait till more research is out there on what is happening in our state since the legalization. Just because it's legal doesn't make it right, and the research I've seen from some of the other states preceding New York are showing increases in psychosis and mental illness and even violence. And so I would like to see more research on how it impacts New York and our community before the board would make a decision to open up something like that here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Rule. I live at 219 London Road in the Village. I love Webster. I love the upswing the Village has been on in recent years. And with all of that, I think there's some great points that have been brought up here tonight. I agree that people should practice caution driving while their ability is impaired, whether it's marijuana, whether it's alcohol, whatever it might be. However, we're all adults. Everyone has that discretion. They make that decision. I understand that adolescents may have access to marijuana. Adolescents will always have access to marijuana. They will find it one way or another. I understand there's concern with the product they may be consuming. Wouldn't it be important to have them have more readily access to safer products? I'm not saying we want our kids to be using it. I'm saying children will find a way, but this isn't for kids. This is for adults. And this is something that can benefit the town. And I'd really like everyone to understand that there will always be risks. Kids will always be kids. And we should be thinking about the bigger picture and how this can benefit the town. We can always have an understanding of what the risks are. We will always want to be focusing on our kids, but I don't know how much stake that has in this conversation as far as what we're looking to do, as far as what this could mean for the town of Webster, based on everything the state is doing and based on what is going on in Rochester at the moment, whether it's the suburbs, whether it's the city, all of that. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the open forum here, and thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Too fast. Good evening, Matt Chatfield, 62 Park Avenue, right here in the village. I'm going to keep my comments brief. I want to start by saying that I don't believe there's any need for the board to rush into making a decision about the time, place, and manner of particular use in the village of Webster. That being said, it may come to fruition in the future. But I want to say that by voting to opt out in December, there was reasons that each of you voted to opt out. It was a unanimous decision from what I was told 8 months ago. And I would ask, what new information do you have today that you didn't have 8 months ago? What was it 8 months ago that made you vote to say, no, we're going to opt out and wait? There hasn't been a single retail dispensary, to my knowledge, that's really even opened up. Everybody's saying, let's get on the forefront of this. You should be right at the opening gate. 8 months ago, you said, we don't need to be at the forefront. I want to ask you, for each of you to say to yourselves, what changed, right? What new information do you have today that you didn't have then? And also, I want you to not consider this to be an economic decision. The math that I am running based on suggested sales volumes doesn't even come close to equating what's being proposed. So this is not an economic windfall for the community. That's not the purpose of this policy decision. The purpose of this policy decision is at the appropriate time, place, and manner for this particular use. That's the weighty decision that you need to make, and that's what I want you to focus on. Thank you.
My name's Carl Holland. I live at 95 Hefner Drive in the village, 47-year resident of the village. And I just wanted to register my opposition to changing the decision that was made previously. I think the character of the village, I just don't think cannabis dispensary would be a good fit. I think it would give a different feel. There's been some argument that, it's rather better to have it here than for somebody to go into another city or neighborhood to buy the product. That works both ways. I could attract people here to purchase the product that we may not want, so just want to put my vote in for staying with the decision that was made.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Peter DeMico. I own the building at 205 North Avenue with my brother and my family. We've lived here for 50 years, over 50 years, since the 60s, and I went to Schrader. There is other places you can buy marijuana right now, 2 or 3. You could go buy it. Nobody's bothered them. Nobody's stopping them. So why should we sell illegally? Why should we get the 120 to 160,000 a year? Don't we need the money for the sewers? Doesn't the village need money? It's gonna come sooner or later, so let's get the money now before everybody has money and it's gonna go down. So that's my feelings. So you should consider that. Thank you. Oh, I got one more comment. I've been in that spot there for, I don't know, 30, 40 years. I have never seen kids walk by there in the 30, 40 years I've been there. It's too far down. They walk in the village, they don't walk down North Avenue.
My name is Christina Spezio. I live at 1217 Wildflower Drive. And I'd like to speak about why I believe there should be a dispensary here in Webster. So I do take edibles, I do smoke weed, it helps me a lot with my anxiety, my depression, all of these things that it helps me overcome on a daily basis. I think that as I'm growing older, I'm going to have my family one day, hopefully soon. I'd like to teach my children the benefits of it and how to use it safely. I don't want them to be going and getting it somewhere else that, could be laced with something else. What if it has no weight in it? They can't control that, but this dispensary seems like it could. I'd also like to point out there are other places in the village, like other smoke shops that I'd like to see the statistics of children going there and buying it, since that seems to be the common topic here, is how this impacts children. But again, knowing that this building would be near Pub 235, I don't necessarily see how kids can go from Spry all the way down there and back up. It just seems unlikely to me, maybe after school, but again, it's very far. But at the end of the day, it would help me personally. I know there's many other people here who would help them medically, and so I'm a firm believer that it should be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
What was your address? I'm sorry. 1217 Wildflower Drive. Thank you.
Peter D'Amico, 705 Webster Road. Just wanted to know, or let everyone know, it's 21 or older to buy this product. It's just like a liquor store. If you've got liquor in your cabinets and your kids want to drink your liquor, they're going to get that. If you have marijuana in the house and your kids want to get your marijuana, I mean, I don't see anyone stopping it, but you have to be 21 or older. You can't consume this product at the store to buy it. And it's going to help the community and bring taxes back to the community, and it's going to bring more money to be able to, like everyone was saying, for help drug abuse and stuff like that. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Can I make one comment? Actually, a question. Is that all right?
You're addressing the question to the board?
Yeah, to the board.
We won't answer you. You could address it.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question directly. I was just curious if you had contact with this organization when to petition against opening a retail dispensary.
If I had contact with
Yeah,
them?
if you had contact in organizing a petition against a retail dispensary at the old Taylor Rental building with a potential...
I had no part in organizing any petition against you.
You were in contact with the organization called when?
I've been in contact with a number of people and organizations, but I did not encourage any kind of, petition.
Oh,
okay.
Thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, Matt, I know time flies, but the opt-out local law was adopted December 9th of 2021, not 2022. Okay. So it's much more than, it's 20 months, not 8 months.
My question to the board is okay. What new information do you have?
Anyone else? If not, then I will close the public comment portion of the meeting. A lot of information has been presented. The board has had discussions and also has information that we have received from both sides, and we will be considering that. There are two other members, and as I have stated, we will have a public referendum? A public hearing. We can't have a referendum. And that will be announced, and it will be either the first or the second meeting in September. Okay. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate your coming and comments to the board. Thank you. You don't have to leave if you don't want. Great. Great crowd. We have a lot of important things yet to go.
May I ask a quick question about the comments that we need
See you guys later.
Bye.
Thanks, good.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
You too, nice to see you.
I know, it wasn't you. Thank you.
Bye, good to see you.
Just about as many yeses as we need.
Yeah.
I would love it. I would love it.
Okay. All right, we are ready to move on, and at this particular time, we are going to have a discussion regarding village signs. And I believe, let's see, Matt left. Okay.
I can help with this.
However,
Okay.
would you like to help?
Yeah, I'll come up here. Okay.
And then we'll call in the vote clock as well.
So, Peter Elder, 59 Dunning Avenue. This is about the signs, and I think I'll introduce this, but I first want to thank Jake for all of his hard work, because he started working on this and got embroiled in different designs and didn't realize that the bid has a committee that I'm the chair of called the Capital Improvement Committee. And our task on the Capital Improvement Committee, all right? Okay, our task on the Capital Improvement Committee is to look at large-scale projects in the village, like the Bigwood sponsors, such as wayfaring signs, parking signs, and so forth. So we were working on that, and we were working at the same time. Jake was working, thinking that he was accomplishing something for the board, and the general feeling from the bid, especially from the Capital Improvement Committee, is that as you're well aware, there was a grant that the village received for the North Avenue project some years ago, where new signs were made. They're the white with green rectangular ones that are.
It's coming back up.
Okay, well, you can add to this too in case I forget something. And they were put, that at the time was thought to be the theme the village was going to adopt for the signs. Now, that doesn't mean you can't put flowers in the poplar. There's a lot of things you can still do. But the idea was that since we already have those signs through the grant mechanism, and they're already sitting down on North Avenue, that would have been the sign that would have propagated throughout the village over the years. Again, not that you have to do this, but just keep in mind the sign's already there. And that motif is there as well when you come off the expressway and look at that, the gazebo there on the corner. That same exact style is there. So again, and boards can change over time, they certainly do, but I would just recommend to you that maybe that's something you should really look at in terms of keeping a design consistency through the village. We actually do have the parameters of those signs. For instance, we know the cost of them in general. We can scale them up, scale them down, put them in different ways, put them in pedestals, different mounts to them. So again, I think from I don't mean to speak for Matt, but I think from our perspective, that common design element would be valuable to have, that we've already established on North Avenue through that grant process.
Can you add the birdie? Because the guy really likes his birdie.
Maybe we could put a bird below it or something. How about a cage with a bird in it? But that was like a swingly answer, sorry. I am. Okay, so anyways, so I just, that's it really. There's nothing much more to it. I would say though that the good part about this is that in addition to the fact that Jake's almost had that design done, this one is done. So there's not much to do. It's just adopt it and then slowly install them depending on how the budget allows. So it's already there. Okay? I don't know if you want to add anything. I know you missed some of what I said.
I missed some of it.
But basically it was our discussion about keeping a common design element based on the science that we've already established through the grants. So.
Correct.
Okay? So that's pretty much it. Okay?
So how much was
Thank
the
you.
sign down on Orchard Street?
Very expensive. Jake, do you remember that number?
So you got to replicate at least 3 more of those.
Well, they don't have to be like that one. So it's, first of all, it's a great question. But second of all, it doesn't have to be exactly constructed like that sign. That sign was done through a state grant. They demanded certain parameters to the sign that we may not necessarily have to adopt for the signs that we would put in locally. So just so you know.
I was confused when you said the design has already been done.
Well, the design.
For that really expensive sign that now you're saying we don't need to do.
Well, there's
No. We could keep the design element the same. We changed the mounting.
So
no, I didn't say that actually.
The color scheme has been established. The font has been established. The size has been established. The materials have been established, but exactly how you orient them and how you mix them all together. And clearly, the actual cobblestone is relatively pricey, and there's a few people that Jake has been able to find that can do that. So, but the other elements of the sign should have a level of consistency with those 2 primary gateways. I think it would be foolish for us to have, yes, we spent federal pass-through money for these 2 tremendously beautiful gateway elements, and then we said, we're going to do our own thing everywhere else. We don't care about it. It would make no sense. You hire design professionals, professional landscape architects, to come up with plans and a theme for those gateway areas. You should follow on that theme. Now, the exact implementation of following on that theme, I think there's probably a more cost-effective way of doing it. But to just throw it out the window, just keep going with what was done many, many years ago. I don't necessarily see one of the steps that the board could take is the board could decide we have a specific color in mind for our signs. And there's a Pantone color identification for whatever that green panel is. The board could make a decision. Our future background color is X, that color. Our future font is this font. So even just using the simple color scheme and the fonts associated with those signs will bring that level of continuity. Expensive stone and masonry work is probably more of a targeted approach at a very specific area.
And it need not be cobblestone. We talked about it being shale or brick, so you can change the material in the base of the sign. So.
Yeah, but we were just noted for cobblestones.
Yeah, I mean, and Matt's point is, Matt, Jake, and I already talked. The thing is, the cobblestone is expensive. So the reality is, you could phase the signs in. We did that with the park signs. We think we took 5 years, almost 4 or 5 years, to put all the park signs in because each one was its own expense. But having that 4-year, 5-year plan allowed us to replace every single sign. And you could do the same thing here. I think it's just having a plan, if you could, to move forward and
That's what we wanted.
So, and you could identify, and I think Jake's already done that, identified the ones that are most in need of replacement. Carl, you certainly have identified the one on West Main, right, as one of the biggest ones. So that could be, you could start there and move on. So that's doable.
Yeah, moving forward. I like it.
Yeah, because that's the other thing too. We don't really know. Maybe Jake can work some magic and get a great cost.
Supply for stuff. Train on that? I don't know if they do that.
But I do think one thing we all agree on is it needs to be done fairly soon. So I think what we're looking for is, I mean, I think the bid's looking for that, our committee, our discussion was to make sure that we implemented this relatively quickly, if you can, so that we can begin the process of doing this. Because, you know, you guys have been talking about how bad the existing signs look. We really should probably do something, at least on that West Main one to start. So.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. I didn't hear a price. You know, how about a ballpark price?
It was part of the project for the North Ave Connector project, and I don't believe it was an itemized thing. When I saw it, to have that one on North Avenue replicated 3 more times, I don't have the email, but the price it was giving me was about $126,000 to do 3 more of them.
Each one, or do what
Combined.
Combined?
Yeah, for
About 40-something.
40-something grand apiece, yeah, for the signs, yeah. So I think there's opportunities to look and you know, people are busy, they have enough work, that's, all right, I'll do it if I really have to, but it's gonna be worth my while kind of price, you know, it's not, but it's a specialty. It's not something that a lot of people do, but maybe there's opportunities with training, with some of the, like I said, the trade unions, the masons, we can reach out to them and see, because it's a skill that it's not in high demand, but it's still in demand sometimes if they want to teach a certain portion of their work to be able to do, their workers to be able to do that. Maybe that's something that we could work and have that as a training opportunity. I think it'd be better to do 3 at once personally, because cobblestone, you can only go up so far every day. So by the time you get here set up, and you go up this far and you gotta wait, if you have 2 other ones to work on, at least you can get a whole day out of it. You know?
Isn't it possible the price will increase too if you wait?
Stones are pretty stable, I think. The supply is pretty consistent.
The other option would be just don't do cobblestone.
Or you do a slightly less complicated version of what was originally done.
I think Jake's position here may be the best one, is to try to get a bid on a couple of possible plans, get them fairly quickly within the next, although you have a lot to do, but in the next month, and then come back to the board so you have something to work on.
Yeah, we do an alternate where you could do something similar to North Charles Sexton Park there, that's that material, not that same layout, but the material, so it's a modular, something that you can put there if that's desirable by the landscape folks. And I mean, if it wasn't for animals, I wouldn't figure out how to get dressed. So I'm not one to select colors and stuff. But if that's something that's worthwhile, or have a couple options, to say, hey, here's what we want, here's an alternate, and get prices that way too.
That's something to be okay with you guys? Okay. Jake, can you do it?
If just authorize, if the board, once we prepare the bid back and have the board review and then authorize me to go out to, or authorize us to go out to bid for the construction of these 3 signs. And I think
Have you ever asked, could you ask for their value engineered, like poured concrete, right, the foundation?
Yeah.
It's pretty, what was done there is substantial, like a car could run into that thing.
Oh, yeah.
And the car would lose in a heartbeat, like.
no, we could put an airplane on.
Rather than go through the time and expense of putting together a formal bid package, can't you just go to various sign manufacturers, installers in Monroe County, just with an RFP and say, give me an estimate, give me some drawings and an estimate?
That's where his one cost came from.
Right, but that's where the one cost came from, but then if it exceeds 25, or if public works contract more than $35,000, it has to be bid unless there's somebody that's on, I don't believe this is on the, I can't think of the name of it now, Tums, I can't think of the name, I mean, the roof. But it's almost like
But so I guess I'm still confused because I haven't heard this board actually see a drawing of 3 new proposed signs, and you already want to go out and bid on something they haven't even seen yet.
Oh, it's like,
Unless you want to just do identical to what's down on Orchard Street and North Avenue?
I think that was.
That was our thought. Our thought.
That would be the ideal.
Right, the only exception being, again, we thought there'd be some flexibility on whether or not the cobblestone would be there, but the sign design would be the same. So what you just said is actually true, we do have the design to look at.
And the 3D model.
And, you're right, and 3D model.
Are there any walls, stone walls in the area that farmers have constructed from the cows that they get out of their farmland?
There's one in Sodus.
That could be scavenged, if you will, or they would donate?
I don't think it's the availability of the material, it's the availability of the skilled labor.
To put it.
Correct, that's it.
I'll give it a try.
Oh, boy.
But I have a lot more base.
Well, Jake, is there a way to price out differently the sign versus the cobblestone? So for instance, could you get a quote on the size of the sign inside of a existing mount that we already have on all these places, and then separate that from the price of the cobblestone and see how that looks? Because the cobblestone ends up being 2/3 the price of the sign, maybe we decide the cobblestone isn't the way to go.
Yeah, I think we could formulate it any way we wanted.
Okay.
If our ideal is those signs, it might be worth doing an RFP, but I think, the rules about it being over 35 grand and the budget numbers that we already had put it over that 35 grand. So, but hey, we do an RFP, maybe they'll come in under 35 grand because it's an RFP and they know they have to, their bid. And put it out there and see, hey, here's what the prices are. But to me, if that's the ideal, that's what we do. Hey, how much is this? Do it again. The person that built them, they built the one as part of that grant, did I think a great job. He's very skilled, and because he did a great job and he's very skilled, he's very busy. So I can't even get him to stop back anymore. So, but yeah, we can. I think we put it out there and put an RFP and say, hey, if it comes in higher than the 35 grand a piece or 35 grand total, because it's a single contract, then you could have to go out to bid. But maybe start with an RFP like Don said, and maybe they'll keep somebody that's contemplating going over 35 grand to keep it under. Well, what's going to hurt? I mean, it's a few pieces of paper. It's not going to hurt. It's worth a shot. So.
Okay. That sound?
Yeah.
If we don't ask, we don't know.
Yes.
Sounds good. So along with that, how about a discussion here on Veterans Park clock?
Okay.
Peter, you provided us with something here.
I did. So this one is about the clock, and thanks for looking at this. So I sent you a letter addressed to Jerry because he's technically the liaison to the Parks and Rec Committee. On the front page, it just shows you some of the conditions of the existing clock, the picture of the existing stone monument down there with the plaque on it, and also shows you some of the disrepair. Where you can see there's obviously paint chipping off. Some of it's a little bit worse when you get real close to it than I thought it was. It really, I mean, we're talking about an outside element that has been there for almost 20 years. So it's showing its age, but it's done a pretty good job for 20 years, except that it hasn't kept time very well for the last 15. Yeah. Which is one of the things we'd like to remedy.
He can't spell, so.
I can't. Oh, yeah, on the clock. Yeah. We're gonna. That's one of the reasons why I suggested in there that maybe we don't have the village and the actual face of the clock to keep that from happening again, but just a little gun shy. But there's a lot of designs. I showed them on the last page. So try to give you a sense of what the clock would look like. We'd have to put in some pretty specific quotes on. That's why I kind of need your feedback before we do that on what you'd like to see at a new clock. But in general, when I looked up the in general average cost of a pedestal clock like this, post clock they actually call them, that would be somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000, depending upon the elements of the clock. The more complex it is, it's going to be more. So there are a lot. The reason I gave you the sites there in the middle on the second page is so I would just recommend if you have a moment to go on and take a look at them yourself, because you can get a really good idea of what these clocks look like. The clock I believe we have now, it looks like, from everything Jake sent me, and it does look like a model that comes from the Verdun company. And you don't think so?
No, it's Fancy Street Clock Company that's no longer.
A fancy street clock. All right, it's very similar to a Verdun clock, though, the Verdun clocks. So so then you could also look there because they have a number of, and they're a very reputable company. The other ones are also good. There's nothing wrong with them, and they're all possible vendors for this particular project. So there's 4 listed there, so a couple of quick things. One, the concrete base in the clock. I'm not a concrete base expert, but it looks okay from my amateur eyes. I would recommend that maybe we keep the bottom, some kind of pattern on the bottom. There's an attractive bottom right now to it, right above the concrete base. I believe the column itself is around 7 feet tall. That's again an estimate from the ground, but I did kind of, I hope I didn't look weird going out there with a yardstick and trying to measure upwards in the air. But it looked to be up 7 feet tall, and then the clock element on the top. You could read the one right now is basically a bluish gray. It might have been gray when it was done. It might have been a little bit bluer. I'm not sure. I don't have any historical pictures of it when it was first put in, but you could choose to keep that color, make it black, or even make it a dark green, something like that, whatever you'd like. I know Daryl doesn't like green that much, but that's another possibility.
It's our village color.
So the actual village clock could be, you could also put a flourish design on the clock itself. I did notice though, and asked a couple of people, people don't, they tend to look at the time, they don't tend to look at the clock as a whole, so I don't know if you want to take the money to put some kind of special design up there, but I would recommend that you put the Village of Webster on the clock itself rather than on the face, which is typical. If you look at the patterns on the last page, you'll see that most of the time it's on the clock as like a slight bump at the top or someplace else to note. It also kind of avoids the problem that we've gotten into over the last 20 years. So the timeline I would propose for this would be tonight being the proposal, and then we'd go out for quotes and try to get that done by the middle of next month if we possibly could. We could always bump these things forward, and then we would then September 28th meeting, you consider the resolution to expend the money from the Parks Fund, order the clock, and then the dedication would be next year. I'm trying to put in a lot of possible delays in there because things get delayed. That's the way it goes. And then Jake had sent me the process that Marcia had put together at one time about how to expend money from the Parks Fund. I put that on the second to last page. Tried to summarize that for you so you knew how that worked. Obviously, the expenditure from the Parks Fund is subject to a permissive referendum, so you have to wait 30 days after that. So there's already built-in delays in this process, so I don't think it's possible to rush it too much. And that's really about it. So I guess what I would ask you guys to do is maybe if you want to provide some email feedback to me or something like that, maybe you could, in the next week or so, I will clump all that together and then we can start. I'll work with Jake to have, because he said he'd be willing to do the quote part, and we will look at whatever elements you want or don't want in the existing clock. I think that's the most important thing to make sure is something you guys are supporting as far as the design goes. Well, we're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. Clearly, over the last 20 years, the mechanism to make a synchronous clock is actually improved. I mean, it looks like that's not even that's so much not an issue that it's not even addressed on the websites or in the actual ordering of the clocks. So they don't even talk about synchronicity between the sides because I think it's an assumption in 2023 that we have the technology to do that. So, but of course, we're going to make sure it doesn't fail. Yeah.
Peter, do you know anything about the clocks that
I don't know what they're, I'd be happy to call them and ask them where they're.
I have that information.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Do you know what company they used?
I don't have it with me.
That's all right.
I could let you know what it is.
Would you?
But Jody and my wife talked to the builder of that clock.
Okay. Absolutely, you can look at that as a possibility.
I like this.
Yeah, these were all examples of clocks from all the different companies, so I didn't choose one company. I wanted to make sure you had one from each. There's one website where you look at it, they actually have a really kind of a neat way of doing it where you click on it and you can actually move the clock. So you can swivel the clock all around and look at it from the top, from the bottom, which actually helps look at other models as well. It gives you a sense of what the clock would look like from different perspectives. And that's the one at the bottom you see there. It's kind of it's not an actual photo, that's really more of an illustration. The three at the top are really photos of existing clocks out there. And you can see there's slightly different elements to them, so you can make decisions on how you'd like to see that.
Jake and I've already determined what we like.
Pick whatever they like as long as it's the middle one on the top.
Yeah.
No, I don't like that one.
It's two-sided.
I like that the bottom.
That's what we want, two-sided.
I don't
Well,
want
Daryl, I think, is more headed towards a four.
Yeah, that looks like it's two-sided.
Yeah.
We probably,
Have a chance of something going wrong with it.
I would think, I'd be more in favor of a four-sided clock as well, but.
four.
So,
It's green, or he's not.
I was trying to give you more design elements there, not concentrate on the faces. So I was making the assumption we'd probably go with the four-sided clock because it does, I mean, Daryl's argument to me was actually pretty compelling, which is no matter what side, where you are, from the street, from the park, from north or south, you're gonna be able to see the time on a four-sided clock. So it makes sense.
Do the four-sided clock now, and you can.
Well, that's because it doesn't work.
Yes, you can. 4 different ones.
Yeah, four different times, yes. Pick your country, Jake.
So we're gonna have a beautiful clock with a park that's a mess.
Why's the
No,
park a
it's a
mess?
mess.
You're jumping to another topic.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll deal with that one. How about you and I talk about that?
Right now, Matt's in the process of doing a grant application and try to get money to fix up Veterans Park, so.
We'll try to crack that cookie.
Talk to Matt about that.
All right.
But we'll try to crack the cookie on the clock first, which has been waiting a long time, so.
Flowers look beautiful.
So Peter, one other question. So your quote of $25,000 to $30,000, is that just the clock itself and not the?
No, that'd be the
whole-
entire apparatus from the base where it screws in
That's
to
everything?
the top of the very top of the clock.
Gotcha.
I don't know, though, looking at that, well, how much, where the labor part of that comes in. So if you ask me like what percentage is equipment versus labor, I'm not sure yet. We'd have to that's why we have to actually put in, I think, what we really want to do is get the board's kind of approval for going onto one of these websites or going on to, and then, going on and actually establishing a real quote and seeing, because we could start looking at what labor looks like for this as well, which I think, has got to be a significant part of this money, so, just because it is and everything. So are you comfortable just kind of giving me feedback over the next week about what you want? And then I'll work with Jake in September and get this to you as fast as possible. Hopefully by the end of the month, we can have something engaged. Don can help write the resolution if you don't mind, Don, and see if we can move forward. Does that sound, if we can get it done in a month, if not, it'll be the first week in October, first meeting in October. But again, I'm very cognizant of the fact that when you start out to do something in government, it can slow down fairly quickly, so I always kind of factor that in. So it's a lot to do, a lot of T's to cross, and a lot of I's to dot.
Does it play any cute music when it strikes?
No, come on.
That'll cost more.
Oh, God.
It's just something else to fail.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
well, this one at the bottom, it looks like a birdhouse.
He's
Right.
so cute.
Yeah.
It
I
doesn't
would
look
like
like
it.
it doesn't look like, it looks like it's a
I
big
like
birdhouse.
the art. It's cute. I don't like them at Top Hill, but I like it.
Okay, well, that's why I'd appreciate if you could give me feedback. I'll send out an email to the whole board again and ask them for their feedback based on the report that I gave you. And then if you'd like to do that, it'd be great, and then we can start working to get this done. Because we're still talking 6 months, so I'd like to get it moving if we could,
Okay.
if possible.
But if they pick one clock, it's like a sole source, right? So what would the RFPs be for?
Well, Marcia said we'd have to get.
Because the 4 companies you've got, they have unique clocks. They don't sell the same clock, right?
I don't think so. I didn't see a single design
Right,
that's
so
exactly the
if
same.
if the board picks which one they like, you don't have to do RFPs, it's just take the resolution to spend the money, wait the 30 days and go buy it.
Yeah.
And these are
It's
the
them
only
coming up,
designs.
you know,
No, there are
There's
literally,
really sold-
there's actually there's probably a dozen more designs you can look at, which is why I'd like to see, if you could take a week and take a look, and then we could come to a conclusion, that
But
would be great.
it's the sole source exception to.
And then by the time we get to the first meeting in September,
Yeah.
if you just told me at that meeting, we should probably go publicly and say, this is the design we want, then it would be nothing for Jake to, well, it would be something, but it would be less, it'll be a little bit of work to go out and actually start doing getting this done, so. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm sorry to volunteer you, but.
Your last hope will be one good old.
Peter,
Yes.
the first company on your report here, the Verdant Company?
Yes.
That's who made the clock in Canandaigua.
Okay, and they are a very, very reputable
Yeah, those are
company.
nice looking clocks.
Yeah. So, reputable could equal more expensive, but we'll see.
Are they shorter? I can't remember.
Well, the diagram that I gave you on this last page, which Jake sent to me, that clock is only got a 3-foot column. Clearly ours is a longer column, so it's going to be this. I just wanted to give you this potential to give you a sense of the dimensions by doing that. Not to say that's would be the clock that we've got. Yeah.
No,
So.
the ones that can enable, but I didn't know if they were.
Well, I know that might be a little shorter. I think that there are, so looking at the clocks on their websites, I would say that most communities have adopted a shorter column for their clocks. I do think that's more common. Ours is a little bit taller, which is, it's good though. I'm not saying anything wrong with what ours look like, but 7 feet does seem to be more on the top side of the height. Because you take the base plus the 7 feet plus the clock itself, it gets to be rather high.
So why don't you say the September 14th, instead of deadline for quotes, that's deadline for this board to decide on which one they want. Otherwise,
Yeah.
Jake and Peter get to pick which clock it is.
Well, no, don't do that, but yeah.
Well,
How about that? How about, so the 14th is the deadline for
I'm
design.
just trying to get past I know how government moves so slow.
Okay, that's fine.
And if you're waiting for 5 people to come to a consensus on a clock, you may be looking at past Christmas.
Are you guys comfortable with that? Okay.
I'll cut straws, we'll bring that.
All right.
Well, let's just get the 5 of you in the same
Seriously.
place to do it.
Well, that's what I said, and I recognize that these things can be slower. And that's fine, because that's just the way things work. But
Is there like a website that we could send them to that they could look at the different?
Well, he does. He's
yes,
got
if you
one.
look, if you go,
Yeah,
I put them right on there because I figured that would be one of the questions everybody would ask. Because there are literally dozens of designs, and I was surprised at how many different possible clock designs there are out there.
The one up the street at the bank, do you
Yeah.
know who that one?
Yeah, Carl just said it was the first one. It was the Virgin Company.
It is? The
Yes, and they have a lot of design. That's a very nice website. I do recommend going on there, taking a look. It's a very good website to look at designs.
So it sounds like most people want a 4-sided, right?
Yes.
Except Jake and I, okay.
Okay. The 2-sided one's just half as many, so. Okay. All right, so I'll sort of, maybe I can just, Heather, can we put on the agenda for September, for the first meeting in September? Is that an issue?
Yeah.
Everybody? Okay. All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
Let's get this out of the way. Well, maybe not. Discussion on the proposed local law regarding building codes administration and enforcement. I was taking a look at that today. I found that there. You want to comment on this? Or do you want us just to take a look?
I don't know how
Want
long,
feedback?
I don't know how long you've all had it, but
Unjust.
Jake, myself, Aaron, and the town fire marshal have gone through it several times.
Okay, because we just got it.
Several times. Well, and this is our final draft. So, and it's, it's rather dry,
Yes, indeed.
but,
I started reading it. However, both go together, is that correct? Because there is a reference here in chapter 30 to 46.
yes,
It
it amends both chapter 30 and 46, which is the fire prevention.
Okay.
Yes.
I think especially Article 30, a lot of it is new, except for when you get to when you get to 30-18, the unsafe buildings, structures, equipment, and conditions, it's on page 18 of it. That's pretty much verbatim out of what is in the code now. Except we added to the definitions of what would constitute kind of junk outside people's houses. And a lot of that comes from the experience with 235 Dunning Avenue, which I should, because if you read the current code, it doesn't have appliances, it doesn't have equipment, it's only got debris, garbage, and junk motor vehicle. And if you go through there, and then solid waste. So, do a bunch of old lawnmowers, clearly aren't debris, because that's like construction stuff. It's not garbage, it's not a junk motor vehicle. Maybe it's solid waste, but that's why we added appliances and equipment.
That's good.
So that there wouldn't be any question about that.
Machinery?
But otherwise, the process for declaring an unsafe building, and then it comes back to, there's an investigation by the code enforcement officer, and it comes back to this board. And it's sort of like, it's the same process that was started for the property on East Main Street, which we didn't have to go through because a bank or someone actually divinely fixed up that building. But where there'd be a hearing in front of this board, and then you would decide whether it actually is an unsafe building. If it is, you order it to be repaired or demolished, and if it's not done within 30 days or 60 days, whatever the time frame is, then the village could cause it to be repaired or torn down and charge the property owner on their taxes. So that's all the same. But the rest of the 30 is new. And the fire prevention, Jake, how much of this is new? Because that's
There's
what
bits and pieces, really took the old and what the model code for the new code is, if somebody didn't have one, and kind of try to put them together like that. It's just simply just because the state, my understanding is the state changed executive law, part 1203 of the executive law that deals with administration and enforcement of the code, and we had to change our laws to, when they changed theirs, to make sure that we're still consistent and have certain things in there. So we just kind of match them together, and then, obviously every time you read the code, you're like, oh, that should change, or there's an error, something that's goofy here. So we took the opportunity to try to update things a little bit and match things together at the same time. Originally, we put them all into one code, and then felt that it was better to separate it back out and keep, we're gonna have it all as a new chapter 30, but then we did that, and then as final review, we said, no, maybe that's not the best, and we went back to 30 and 46 and kept them like they are.
I like that better than combining.
Yes, and.
So what I'd like to do is, in the September 14th meeting, is have the board consider a resolution to set the public hearing to adapt this.
Yes.
So, that gives you, so the public hearing would be at the last board meeting in September, theoretically, and this would give you a lot of time to read this thing, and if you had any questions, you could let Jake or myself or Aaron know.
Yeah, we got that. And one on Dunning Avenue.
And I can tell you, and so on Dunning Avenue, last 235 Dunning Avenue.
Yeah.
Jean and David.
Elk.
Elk, yes, thank you. I knew it was a real short last name, it just wasn't. So, Aaron and I go over to the town court at 10 o'clock. And
So it's like Friday.
last Friday. So Judge, and it was supposed to be down for a trial, but for some reason Judge DeSalvo didn't have it down for a trial. So, and he had other things at 11. I don't know what got lost in translation. But in any event, when Mr. Elk and his mom showed up with their attorney, Dave Morbido, who I get along with Dave fine, he's a very good lawyer, primarily does criminal stuff. His office in East Rochester, I think. But, so what happened is that Mrs. Elk, because technically she's the property owner, she was granted an adjournment and contemplation of dismissal, with the condition being, so the condition that the property is cleaned up within 30 days. The reason that Aaron and I agreed to that was because finally, Mr. Elk at least did something. He actually rented a storage unit over on the ones on Phillips Road by Holy Trinity, which is the first time in over a year he's done anything. So we took that as at least a good faith, a show of good faith that he's gonna do something. And he started with all that, he had every excuse in the book. He had this injury and that injury and why he couldn't do this stuff. So he wanted 60 days, but the judge said, no, all you're getting is 30 days. So he's got 30 days to move everything into the storage unit. We said we don't care where it goes, as long as it's off the front, the side, and the back of your property. And the other condition is that Mrs. Elk specifically granted permission for Aaron to go on the property to inspect it, not in the house, but at least, in the backyard, and so you can see that the stuff is out of there. If it's not out of there, well, I guess I gotta, so the adjournment and contemplation and dismissal is technically for 6 months. So he's got to, the other condition, he's got to keep it clean for at least for the 6 months, or it all comes back again, and we start over. So basically though, if it's not cleaned up in 30 days, at that point, the judge will set it down for trial again, because it's not going to get dismissed. But since he spent at least $138 for the first month rent, hopefully he'll move stuff in there and keep renting out the storage unit.
I wonder what it looks like inside the house.
Well, Aaron and the fire marshal want to get in the house, but you gotta make an application for an administrative search warrant. It's basically like any other search warrant. You gotta show probable cause that there are violations of the building, property maintenance, and fire codes. And it's gotta be by affidavit. So, right, unless they, Aaron says, well, I can look into I can see that there's stuff in the garage. Well, the garage isn't in the house. How do you know what's going on in the house? Because he's very careful not to go on the property and peek through the windows. So I said, Aaron, you gotta, if you can tell me what the probable cause is, why you believe that there's, and they gotta be specific code violations. We can't, it's not an opportunity, for a fishing expedition, just to go in there and try to find violations.
Well, it's a beginning anyway.
That's the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah. So supposedly, some of the neighbors know what the inside looks like, so well, you get affidavits from the neighbors.
Exactly.
But, I told Aaron, you gotta tell me what personal knowledge you have, and if you don't, I can go with you and we can sit down with the neighbors and try to put together an affidavit if you want, but it's just something that he needs to set aside the time to actually do it if they want to pursue this search warrant. But I think step one is let's get the outside cleaned up first. At least that will alleviate the issues with the neighborhood. Having to look at this stuff. The other thing, Mr. Elk admits that he runs a scrapping business. And I told him, well, you can't run a scrapping business in a residential zoning district. And the village hasn't cited him for that, but it's something, if he does it in the future, you can. You know, it's not a home occupation. So I said, you can do the paperwork for it in your house, but you can't store the scrap at your house.
But he even admitted?
Oh, he admitted, he said, yeah, well, his nickname is Dave the Scrapper, or Scrapper Dave.
So if he were to go around on Monday or Tuesday, gather this and immediately move to the scrapyard to sell.
Yeah, as long as
That's what he used to do, I think.
Yeah, as long as the stuff isn't stored outside, that's fine. I think, and I think Carl's right, that's what he used to do, but as he's gotten older and slower or something, he just, the step of actually turning the scrap into money is lagging behind. He loves collecting the
Yeah,
stuff.
he's just accumulating, but not.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, okay, that's good.
Or that, so that's where the horse.
Good.
Good.
Okay, claims and warrants. Next, I had a chance to look them over and did not find anything necessarily out of the ordinary.
No, I was just wondering what a settling cone was, USA Blue Book?
It's a device they use for settling solids in their lab work in the,
Oh, but, okay,
so like an M-Hawk column.
got it. So when I get,
CoreLogic paid their tax bill twice. So you get a refund on one of them.
yeah.
Normally I'll put it in Google, but Danielle doesn't like, love manual checks. She prefers things to make it clear and less option for use. So you may see things going through the building more.
If there are no questions or concerns, I'd ask for a motion to approve the claims and warrants.
I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And lastly, we have a resolution authorizing the purchase of a new street sweeper. And you have this information here in front of you. I believe Jake said that the one we have currently is about 11 years old. And I see in the bill page that we're paying about close to $8,000 for repair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yep, it's certainly, it served its purpose, but it is getting, worn out. The guy that was in to do some of the repairs said it's a very well-maintained machine. He was very impressed with it. Like I said, it's tired and, he was here, fixed one thing, the next day, the hose goes on it, and then after that, another hose. But this machine, we looked at the Rabo that we have now, we looked at this Timco's, we looked at Elgin's. We started out looking at them at the equipment show in April, and tested different versions. There's a 435, the 600, the Timco ones that tested the Rabos. Their new one had different things come back out here, and this is one, obviously, and certainly way heavy on the user's input as well, and then, observation of the way that it picks up. Ultimately, the sweepers used to pick up debris, and this one really picked it up well. This one has the right seat, which makes sense when you're sweeping, to put the guy along the curb rather than on the other side. There's a lot of pluses to this machine. it is about 17 or 18 grand more than what the Ravo was. But it, I think it's way better than the Ravo. Right, we're gonna save that labor time, I think. This is a really, like I said, really nice.
Will you be able to get any money for this one or no?
The one we have now, that's one of the other reasons that when we talked to them, they had put together budget numbers for us and had, what would ours be for a trade-in for the company, the same company, the ones that sell Ravo. And he came back with about $7,500. It was 10 years ago, it was about 12, 13 years ago, it was $170,000, $180,000 machine. Now it's 302, I think it was, and it's only worth 75. So that's all we had now. I'm sorry, it didn't hold its value. And this truck, I like this option. And
so are you going to take it to auction or something?
Yes,
That's
yeah.
what I meant. Can you get anything for it?
So
Yeah.
you'll hope at auction you'll get more than $7,500.
I think we certainly could. I like this,
Yes.
this truck mounted one as well, so.
Yeah, I think it'd be wonderful with my questions.
Yeah, no, we're not
Sorry.
gonna just throw it away.
Jay, then,
Just curb it.
Dave, the scrapper Dave.
You're giving the scrapper Dave.
Oh, my gosh, I'm gonna have to deliver it to him.
Yeah.
Jake, I'm a little confused. I'm looking at the real lease page, which says 6 annual, because I think you were talking about 6 annual lease payments. And there they talk about $64,800 and some, and a 5.97% interest rate. And then I'm looking at Kimco municipal lease purchase quote, and they are quoting for 6 years 5.15% and an annual payment of $53,300. Why is there such a discrepancy?
Well,
Are we going with one versus the other, and which way?
Yeah, one of them, Timco included, we have in this year's budget 60,000. When we were setting up the budget, we included 60,000 for a lease payment. So we have $50,000. This incorporated a $50,000 down payment, so the amount financed was about $50,000 less. But when you just, I was looking at percentage to percentage, and I talked to the gentleman from Real Lease, I was like, so if it was less, if we lease for fewer years, is it a different rate? No, same rate. And that's the rate, that almost 6%. And in fact, he said it went up another 0.12, I think. So it'd be about 6 now, between the time that he quoted this. And, this would have been locked in, but he said, it's just crazy right now. The other one did operate with the Timco, who's actually the manufacturer, self-financing it themselves. They're, 4.85% for a 4-year, but I think that, we could certainly talk.
You were looking at 6, why don't we talk to 6 years?
Yes, yeah, we were looking at 6 years because that's kind of where their budget lined up with what we had without, I guess, impact to the budget of what we have now. I mean, the 5-year, I think, would be very close. I think we could squeeze an extra couple grand out in each budget year to be able to take it to 5-year and then save $9,000 in interest, which I think, obviously a good amount of money. So that would be my, and plus you're saving another, 0.2% in interest rate too. Save the year of interest, you're saving 0.2% in interest as well. I think that might ultimately be the best option to look at as a 5-year. But right now it's trying to get the order in. We have to do a PO. This is using the Onondaga County bid, so it's been competitively bid and everything already, so, from Freightliner, and then Timco would actually be the one that would hold the lease. So at Timco, when they first came out, it was close to 5. I was, used to everything else we've gotten has been in the 3s. When we looked at it close to 5, it's crazy, that's all real lease, so we used before, just give us a quote on it. They came back almost 6, and so I talked to Danielle, to see if there's anything else that she would suggest her to look at, and she thought about it, she's like, these are, really what that's the rates are using what the Fed publishes, and, yeah. So that's, I guess that's where we're at. I would advocate, I mean, this isn't to sign any lease paperwork now. It would be to be able to put the purchase order in for the vehicle, and then they, from that purchase order, then they would develop the lease, to be able to have that reviewed and then have that calculated out.
Okay.
But,
All right. Well, looks like I personally would like to
yeah, that would be mine.
Okay, so, well,
What? Oh, okay, so the amount financed is 269, because you're putting 60 grand down?
50, yes.
50 grand down?
Yep. Yeah, that's the difference, but then, you know, it didn't have them, I didn't want it, you know, the real
Oh,
lease.
so this other one, real lease, he was quoting it at 319, 300.
It's 319, and I was looking at the percentage, I said, all right, if you change this, put anything down as a percentage change, he said no, so
Okay.
I'm not making the guy go redo a quote, and redo all his paperwork, and come back and tell me that it's, we're still not gonna take it. You know, it just seems like make work, why make them, you know, yeah, don't bother if it's,
Exactly.
you know, and we have leases who really, they're great, they're actually a Webster company, which I didn't know they're over in Empire. Super nice people to talk to, and but, you know, it's nice, doesn't save money, and, you know, Timco's nice too, and they're even nicer because they're percent lower, so. That's the kind of nice I'm looking for when I'm buying something from somebody else's money.
Honest to God.
well, then I would ask for a motion to authorize the purchase of the Timco street sweeper for $319,267.50.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And then and I appreciate what you did there. I'll take the lease, once we get that, after we send the deal and with the lease, and we'll put that on a board meeting for later on to look at the lease and the benefit.
Okay.
It was the 319, 830, 96,
319 through 36, what?
what was the number?
319, 267.50.
Oh.
Well, I believe that, unless you have anything else, concludes our.
So, one other question I got.
Go to the
So,
questions.
if we go back to number 3, and I heard the mayor say that you're gonna have a public hearing on either the first or second Thursday in September on this whole cannabis thing. But that assumes you got 3 votes to set a public hearing in the first place, because obviously you can't, we gotta have notice.
Right?
Well,
So we can ask for.
but so my point is, then do you want me to prepare a resolution to set a public hearing for consideration on September 14th? And then see if you get 3 votes for that, and if you don't get 3 votes, it just dies, and you don't even have a public hearing. If you get 3 votes, then it goes to a public hearing,
Makes more sense.
right? You gotta take a resolution to set a public hearing, which requires 3 of you to agree.
So.
Like, so I don't know, if you're dead set against it, why would you even want it to go to a public hearing?
Do I?
I don't know. So my point is, you may not get, there may not be 3 votes. But, so I'll prepare the resolution, it'll be on, to set the public hearing, and it'll be on the agenda for September 14th, and we'll see if there's 3 votes or
And if
not.
there are 3 votes, then it's for.
Then it would be on the next,
It'll be
whatever
moved.
the next.
By the way,
one
this
is.
is gonna be moved, I'm asking to move the meeting from that Thursday to the Tuesday, on the 29th to the 27th of September.
Would you need the proposed local law before setting the public hearing? Would it have to be on the, or not before the public hearing, not before?
Yeah, I'll put that together, it's simple,
Okay.
it's just a local law that repeals whatever the local law number that's in there.
No action tonight.
That's all it is.
Could take
Well,
no
would it
action
repeal it as
tonight.
entirety, or would it, if presuming whatever, before I declare that, I have to decide, the retail dispensary or retail, but keep in the adult, stay opted out of the adult use establishments, if that's what the consideration is.
If that's what the board wants, then that's what it'll be.
Chapter 36.
When would you,
Mine is zoning.
So it would be to repeal only that part of the prohibition to prohibit the establishment of retail dispensary licenses.
which then would be something that would be brought up for the 29th.
Assuming it passes, yes.
Wait, 20,
That would be the
Well,
same as.
well, now you want
That would be
to,
the
but now
same
you want
as
to move it to the
public hearing night.
27th. Now you want to move it to the 27th.
wait, the 29th is a Friday.
So it'd be,
27th is a Wednesday, 26th is a Tuesday.
26th.
But when is zoning?
The 19th, I believe.
Okay.
third, whatever the third Tuesday is.
Not the same week.
Okay, so it'll be the 19th,
Same day as
to
your
the
meeting.
26th, okay. Just so I can adequately, do you want to take a vote for that then, to move it to the 26th?
Well, yeah, because you've already, part of the organization meeting was not, it was going to be on the 28th, so you got to take a resolution, a motion
To change it
to
to,
change.
I have to have enough time to be able to set the agenda, I think, so it's easier if I know now for sure if you're going to change it to Tuesday. Because then I have to put it, ideally, that needs to go to the week before that to the Herald. So it would have to be the week of the 11th in the Herald. And we've been trying to do it the week prior.
Well,
So if you
and
could
I
do
would
that.
like to make a resolution to change the date of the second meeting of September from the 28th, Thursday the 28th, to Tuesday the 26th.
Hold on one second, okay? Let's break this.
At 7.
At 7 o'clock.
You won't be there. Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready.
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy? Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Anything else? And with that, I will, yes, we'll do that. I'll ask, someone make a motion to close the workshop.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.